A city of over 1 million people, no toilet paper, no disinfectant, no germ theory, and yet ancient Rome handled human waste better than many modern cities do today. Not cleaner, but better. While modern systems clog, overflow, and collapse under their own weight, Rome built sanitation that worked for centuries. Not because they were lucky, because they understood something we forgot. They treated waste as an engineering problem, not a personal one. And they accepted one uncomfortable truth that most modern planners still refuse to face. Civilization lives or dies on what it does with its filth. We like to believe progress is automatic, that newer means smarter, that modern cities must obviously be superior to anything ancient. But when you look at how Rome dealt with poop, real systems, real laws, real infrastructure, that assumption starts to fall apart. So what changed? Why did we stop building for resilience? And what does human waste reveal about the rise and fall of civilizations? Think about your own city for a moment. If the pumps stopped tomorrow, how long would it last? Let's get into it. Rome never treated waste as something individuals were expected to figure out on their own. This is the first mistake modern cities make, and it is the reason Rome's system lasted 5 centuries while modern infrastructure starts cracking after 50 years. In Rome, sanitation was not a household chore. It was a branch of government. The same way roads were planned, the same way aqueducts were engineered, waste removal was designed into the city from the ground up. Archaeological reconstructions show public latrines built directly into bathhouses, marketplaces, and major street intersections, not tucked away in back alleys, not hidden behind locked doors, integrated into daily life the same way fountains and temples were. By the 4th century, Rome had around 144 public latrines serving a population of over 1 million, and waste removal was constant, not weekly, not emergency-based, always moving. Roman law assigned specific officials called aediles to oversee street cleanliness, sewer inspection, and public hygiene enforcement. These were not low-ranking bureaucrats. Aediles held real political power. Their job was to make sure waste never accumulated long enough to become a problem. Later, Emperor Trajan created an entire administrative office dedicated to the sewers alone. A permanent government body whose only purpose was keeping waste flowing out of the city. Think about that. Rome had a dedicated sewer administration 2,000 years before most modern cities even had plumbing codes. And the legal structure went further. Building owners were required to keep the street in front of their property clean. Fines existed for dumping waste improperly. Roman jurists like Ulpian wrote detailed opinions on who was liable when someone threw the contents of a chamber pot out of a window and hit a person walking below. This was not a hypothetical. It happened often enough that the law had specific rules for it. Now watch what happens when you flip that logic. Modern cities treat sanitation as invisible until it breaks. Pipes are buried underground where nobody thinks about them. Maintenance budgets get cut because nothing looks wrong on the surface. Infrastructure ages in silence until a pipe bursts or a treatment plant fails, and suddenly everyone realizes the system was held together by luck. Rome did the opposite. They assumed the worst about human behavior. They assumed people would dump waste wherever it was easiest. So instead of hoping for discipline, they controlled where waste could go. They built the system around how people actually behaved. Not because Romans were more virtuous, because their systems were smarter. Rome's most famous sewer was not built to handle poop. It was built to drain a swamp. The Cloaca Maxima, the largest and most iconic sewer in the ancient world, started as an open drainage canal in the 6th century BC. Roman engineers constructed it to drain the marshy lowlands between the hills of Rome so the area could be used for building. That drained land became the Forum Romanum, the political, commercial, and religious heart of the entire civilization. The sewer came first, the city came second. This is where it gets interesting, because modern cities do the exact opposite. We build the buildings, install the toilets, and then scramble to figure out how to move waste away from them. We engineer the problem backward and then wonder why the solutions are so expensive and so fragile. Rome started with water and gravity. Everything else followed. Roman engineers recorded massive drainage projects designed to dry marshlands, redirect rainwater, and stabilize the ground beneath future construction. The writer Strabo described the Cloaca Maxima as large enough to drive a wagon loaded with hay through its tunnels. Pliny the Elder called Rome's sewers one of the 3 most magnificent works the city ever produced, and the engineering principle behind all of it was brutally simple. Water flows downhill. The entire system ran on gravity. No pumps, no mechanical pressure, no electricity. Aqueduct overflow from public fountains and bathhouses was channeled into street gutters. Those gutters drained into smaller sewers. Those smaller sewers fed into larger trunk lines, and those trunk lines emptied into the Cloaca Maxima, which carried everything straight into the Tiber River. Every drop moved by its own weight. Every tunnel was angled to keep flow constant. The system never needed to be turned on because it never turned off. Over time, as Rome's population exploded past 1 million, the drainage network evolved into a full waste removal system. Public latrines were connected. Bathhouse wastewater was routed through toilet facilities before entering the sewers, flushing them continuously. Private homes in wealthier neighborhoods tapped into the public lines. What began as land reclamation became the most advanced urban sanitation network the ancient world had ever seen. And it survived earthquakes. It survived floods. It survived the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire. Sections of the Cloaca Maxima are still visible in Rome today, still structurally intact after 2,500 years. Now think about what happens when a modern pump station loses power for 12 hours. Basements flood. Sewage backs up into streets. Emergency crews scramble. Entire neighborhoods evacuate. Rome never had that problem because Rome never depended on a machine that could fail. Gravity does not need a budget. Gravity does not need maintenance. Rome understood that. We forgot it. The Roman water system followed one rule that no engineer was ever allowed to break. Clean water in, dirty water out. No exceptions. This sounds obvious. It is not. Medieval London drank from the same Thames it dumped sewage into. Cities across Europe drew water from wells sitting meters away from cesspits leaking into the groundwater. Even today, modern combined sewer systems regularly overflow during heavy rain, pushing raw sewage directly into the same rivers and lakes that supply drinking water. Rome solved this problem 2,000 years ago, and the solution was elegant. Fresh water entered the city through aqueducts, not from the Tiber, not from local wells, not from any source that could be contaminated by the city itself. Roman engineers went to extraordinary lengths to bring water from springs dozens of kilometers away, carried across valleys on massive stone arches, through underground channels cut into mountainsides, all flowing by gravity alone. By the 1st century, Rome operated at least 9 major aqueducts delivering somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million cubic meters of fresh water every single day. Frontinus, the official water commissioner under Emperor Nerva, documented the entire system with the precision of a military strategist. Every aqueduct was catalogued. Every distribution point was mapped. Every illegal tap was hunted down and punished. And the quality mattered. Romans classified their water by source and taste. The best aqueducts carried drinking water. Lower quality supplies were routed to gardens, fountains, and artificial lakes. One aqueduct, the Aqua Alciatina, drew from a lake instead of a spring and was considered so poor that Frontinus himself noted it was unsuitable for drinking and used only for irrigation and staged naval battles. They did not just move water, they sorted it. Now here is the critical part. Once that clean water entered the city, it never stopped moving. Public fountains ran constantly, not on timers, not on demand. Water poured out day and night, and the overflow was not wasted. It drained into the streets, ran through the gutters, passed through the public latrines, and flushed the sewers on its way out of the city. Every fountain was a cleaning system. Every bath was a flushing mechanism. The entire water supply was engineered to do double duty: hydrate the population on the way in, wash the city on the way out. Archaeological reconstructions confirm that many public latrines were deliberately positioned to receive wastewater from nearby bathhouses. The used bath water, still flowing by gravity, passed beneath the latrine seats and carried waste directly into the sewer network. No pumps, no valves, just continuous flow doing the work automatically. This is where it gets interesting, because the system had a weakness Rome never solved. There were no stench traps, no U-bends, no water seals between the sewer and the surface. That meant odours, gases, and occasionally vermin could travel back up through the pipes and into buildings or latrines. The smell in a Roman public toilet was not pleasant. Methane buildup in the tunnels below was a genuine hazard. Roman writers record fears of rats, snakes, and even explosions coming from beneath the seats. But the water kept moving, and that movement was the difference between a city that functioned and a city that poisoned itself. When Rome fell and its aqueducts crumbled, medieval Europe lost this separation entirely. Cities shrank, infrastructure collapsed. People went back to drinking from rivers fouled by their own waste. The physician Galen had already warned Romans not to eat fish caught downstream from the Cloaca Maxima because the pollution was so severe. Medieval cities ignored that lesson for 1,000 years. Rome did not have germ theory. Rome did not know what bacteria were. But Rome understood one thing that medieval and even some modern cities keep forgetting. The moment you mix your water supply with your waste stream, people start dying. And they refuse to let that happen. Here is something modern cities still have not figured out. Waste has value. It always did. Rome knew it. We pretend otherwise. In most modern systems, the goal is simple. Get rid of it. Flush it away. Bury it. Burn it. Send it somewhere nobody has to think about it. Out of sight, out of mind. And when the landfills overflow or the treatment plants hit capacity, everyone acts surprised. Rome took the opposite approach. Waste was not a problem to hide. It was a resource to circulate. Start with urine. To a modern person, urine is the definition of worthless. You flush it and never think about it again. To a Roman, urine was an industrial chemical. Fullers, the workers who cleaned and processed textiles, depended on urine as a key ingredient in their trade. The ammonia in aged urine acted as a natural cleaning agent for wool and cloth. It stripped grease, softened fibers, and set dyes. This was not some fringe practice. This was standard Roman manufacturing. The system was organized. Terracotta jars called amphorae were placed on street corners specifically for passers-by to urinate into. Workers gathered the full jars, transported them to the fulleries, and the urine went to work. The business was so profitable that Emperor Vespasian put a tax on it. When his own son Titus objected to taxing something so vulgar, Vespasian held up a coin and delivered one of history's most famous lines. Pecunia non olet. Money does not stink. That tax generated real revenue for the imperial treasury. Waste was not just managed, it was monetized. But urine was only half the story. Solid waste moved too. Roman agricultural writers like Columella and Varro describe detailed systems for collecting human excrement and transporting it to farms outside the city. Workers called stercorarii made their living emptying cesspits and hauling waste in carts through the streets. These carts were even exempt from Rome's strict daytime traffic ban on wheeled vehicles, a privilege that tells you exactly how essential the work was considered. The waste went into composting pits on farms. Varro recommended protecting the pits from direct sunlight to produce better quality manure, though ironically that advice actually reduced the heat needed to kill harmful pathogens. The Romans did not understand the biology, but they understood that decomposed waste grew better crops than fresh waste, and they built systems around that observation. Now here is what modern people miss about this arrangement. None of this was driven by environmental idealism. They were recycling because waste sitting in the streets caused disease, attracted vermin and made life unbearable. Moving it out of the city and onto farmland solved multiple problems at once. Streets stayed cleaner, farms stayed productive, and the people hauling the waste earned a living doing it. Profit followed function. The economy of waste removal sustained itself because every link in the chain had an incentive to keep things moving. Compare that to today. Modern waste management is a cost centre. Governments spend billions collecting, transporting, and processing sewage. Taxpayers fund it. Nobody profits from it. And because there is no economic incentive built into the cycle, the moment budgets tighten, maintenance gets deferred and systems start failing. Rome built a waste economy where every participant, from the fuller buying urine to the farmer buying manure to the stercorarius hauling it all, had a reason to keep the system running. We built a waste system where the only incentive is to make it disappear as cheaply as possible, and then we wonder why it keeps piling up. Let's be honest, Rome was not clean, not by modern standards, not even close. Public latrines were dim, cramped, and foul-smelling. Dozens of people sat side by side on stone or wooden benches with holes cut roughly 12 inches apart. No dividers, no privacy, no ventilation worth mentioning. The floors were often slick with waste from people who missed the holes or did not bother trying. The air hung heavy in rooms with low ceilings and tiny windows, and the wiping situation was worse than the seating. Romans shared a communal sponge mounted on a stick called a tersorium. You used it, rinsed it in a shallow water channel running at your feet, and left it for the next person. The same sponge, the same water, all day long. Archaeologist Olga Koloski-Ostrow, who has spent decades studying Roman latrines, describes these facilities as breeding grounds for exactly the kind of cross contamination modern hygiene exists to prevent. Parasites were everywhere. Studies of ancient latrine deposits and cesspit sediments consistently show that intestinal worms like roundworm and whipworm were widespread across the Roman Empire, not just in poor neighbourhoods, everywhere. Ironically, some researchers have found that parasite rates during the Roman period were no better than during the Iron Age that preceded it. All that infrastructure, all those sewers and bathhouses and aqueducts, and the worm eggs kept showing up at the same rates. The sewers themselves were not exactly safe. Without stench traps or sealed connections, the tunnels below the latrines were open highways for rats, snakes, and spiders. Methane gas from decomposing waste could ignite. Roman writers describe real fears about creatures crawling up through the seat openings. Sitting down in a Roman public toilet required a level of trust in the universe that most modern people would not be willing to extend. And the social dynamics were just as uneven as you would expect. Wealthy Romans avoided public latrines entirely. They had private facilities in their homes, chamber pots emptied by enslaved workers, and the resources to keep waste at arm's length. Public latrines were built for everyone in theory, but used mostly by the working classes in practice. Women were largely excluded from these facilities altogether, partly because most latrines were located in male-dominated commercial districts, and partly because the safety risks of visiting them, especially at night, were simply too high. So no, Rome was not a sanitation paradise. The toilets were disgusting. The parasites were real. The class divide was brutal. But here is the catch. The system kept working, not perfectly, not cleanly, but continuously, for centuries. When the Tiber flooded, which happened almost every year, the sewers backed up and waste surged into buildings connected to the system. It was a disaster. But the water receded, the gravity resumed, and the flow started again. No emergency crews needed, no generators required, no billion-dollar repair bills. When people dumped waste where they should not have, which they did constantly, the aedes fined them, the stercorariae cleaned it up, and the gutters carried the rest into the drains. The system absorbed human failure without collapsing. When buildings crumbled and pipes cracked, the damage was local. One blocked sewer did not bring down the entire network. The system degraded slowly, section by section, over decades and centuries, not all at once in a single catastrophic failure. Now compare that to what happens when a modern city loses power for 48 hours. Pumping stations shut down, sewage backs up into homes, treatment plants stop processing, raw waste flows into rivers, entire districts become uninhabitable. One disruption cascades through the whole network because modern sanitation depends on an unbroken chain of electricity, pressure, and mechanical systems that must all function simultaneously. Modern cities chase sterility, every surface disinfected, every pipe sealed, every pathogen eliminated. And when that perfect system encounters one fault, a power outage, a flood, a budget cut, the whole thing cracks open. Rome chased durability. They accepted the filth, they accepted the smell, they accepted that people would behave badly and that infrastructure would take damage. And they built something that absorbed all of it and kept functioning anyway. That difference matters. Not because Rome was smarter, because Rome was realistic about what a city full of humans actually produces. And realism, it turns out, lasts longer than perfection. Rome did not win because it was cleaner. It won because it was organized, that people will always produce waste, and that pretending otherwise is how civilizations break. Modern systems chase efficiency and profit. Rome chased reliability. And the difference shows every time a storm knocks out a pumping station or a budget cut delays a repair that should have happened 10 years ago. When Rome fell, sanitation collapsed with it. Medieval London inherited Roman sewers and let them rot. Cities forgot how to move their own waste. Europe spent the next 1,000 years drinking from rivers it dumped into. Empires are not destroyed by enemies first. They are destroyed when basic systems stop working, especially the ones nobody wants to talk about. Now I want to ask you, does your city handle its waste the way Rome did? Or is it one power outage away from collapse? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you liked this video, please hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.